It was an ordinary Tuesday evening, or at least it started that way. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our living room. I had just returned from a grueling day at work, the kind where the clock seems to mock you with every tick. The scent of dinner wafted through the air, mingling with the faint sound of laughter coming from our kitchen. My wife, Sarah, was preparing something special, a rare treat since she usually opted for quick meals during the week. I dropped my bag by the door and called out to her, but she didn't respond. I shrugged it off, thinking she was too engrossed in her cooking to hear me. I moved toward the kitchen, ready to surprise her with a kiss, but as I entered, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter. The screen lit up with a message that was more than just a notification. It was a lifeline to something I wasn't a part of. Curiosity gnawed at me. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. I picked up her phone and my heart dropped. The name on the screen was unfamiliar. Jake. The message read, "I can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The world around me blurred and the laughter that had filled the room morphed into a haunting echo. I dropped the phone as if it had burned me. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations I had dismissed as innocent. Late nights at work, sudden trips to her friend's house, the vague excuses that had become all too familiar. They all led to this moment, a culmination of betrayal that crashed down on me like a tidal wave. "Sarah," I shouted, my voice thick with emotion. I could hear the clatter of pots and pans as she rushed into the room, her face brightening with a smile that quickly faded when she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern, but I could see the flicker of something else in her eyes, guilt. I held up her phone, the incriminating message glaring back at us. "What is this?" Her face paled, the color draining from her cheeks. I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been cheating on me." The words tasted bitter in my mouth. I had always prided myself on being a man of reason, but in that moment I felt a primal urge to lash out, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted upon me. "It was a mistake," she pleaded, stepping closer, but I took a step back, creating distance between us. "It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything. Do you think I'm stupid? You've been lying to me for months, Sarah." Anger surged through me, hot and uncontrollable. "Who is he?" "This Jake." Her silence was deafening, and in that moment I understood. She had been living a double life, and I was nothing more than a pawn in her game. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever imagined, a knife twisting in my gut. "I can't believe you would do this to us, to me." My voice cracked, and I felt the tears threatening to spill over. "We built a life together, Sarah. How could you throw it all away?" "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you." But I couldn't hear her excuses anymore. The warmth of our life together felt like ashes in my mouth. I turned away, feeling a whirlwind of emotions, anger, heartbreak, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. In that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. I could either let her walk away from this unscathed, or I could fight back. As I stood there, the weight of her infidelity crashing down on me, a dark thought began to take root. It wasn't just about her betrayal, it was about the man who had taken her from me. A game developer, no less. I had heard about him through her when she gushed about his latest project. I couldn't let him win. My heart hardened with resolve. If she wanted to play games, then I would make sure he lost. With that thought, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I would not be a victim in this story. I would write my own ending. Sarah and I had been together for nearly 7 years. We met in college, both of us pursuing our dreams in the bustling city of San Francisco. She was studying graphic design, and I was deep into computer science. We bonded over late-night study sessions, shared meals at food trucks, and our mutual love for video games. Those early days were filled with laughter, passion, and dreams of what our future together might hold. After graduation, we moved in together, and life unfolded in predictable ways. I landed a decent job at a tech firm, working long hours but finding satisfaction in the work I did. Sarah found her niche in the gaming industry, quickly rising through the ranks as a talented designer. I was proud of her, but as she became more successful, I noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. She began to spend more time at work, often late into the night, and her enthusiasm for her job transformed into a consuming obsession. At first, I justified her late nights as a necessary sacrifice for her career. I was supportive, often encouraging her to pursue her goals. But there were moments when I felt a shadow creeping into our relationship. The late nights became more frequent, and weekends that we used to spend together morphed into solitary hours while she attended industry events or worked on projects. I brushed it off, convincing myself that this was the price of ambition. Looking back, I see the signs now. The way she would smile when she received a text message, the way her eyes would light up when she talked about work, and the subtle changes in her schedule that I had dismissed as part of her job. I had been so focused on my own career that I failed to notice the cracks forming in our relationship. It was as if I was living in a fog, content to believe that everything was fine while the foundation of our marriage began to crumble beneath us. The day she got the call about her promotion was one of the happiest moments of our lives. She was ecstatic and I was thrilled for her. But in hindsight, that happiness was short-lived. Her new position came with responsibilities that pulled her further away from me. I tried to be understanding, but the distance between us grew, and I felt increasingly isolated. I missed her laughter, the inside jokes we used to share, and the intimacy that had once been the cornerstone of our relationship. As her career flourished, I took on more responsibilities at work, trying to match her ambition. I worked late nights too, but I never strayed from our commitments. I was devoted, believing that our love could withstand the trials of life. I wanted to be the supportive husband, the one who stood by her side no matter what. But with each passing day, I felt more like a ghost in my own home. The night of the discovery, I remembered how she had come home late from a work event just the week before. She had been excited, talking about a new project she was working on with a team of developers. When she mentioned Jake's name, I had felt a twinge of jealousy. He was a rising star in the industry, known for his innovative ideas and charm. I had dismissed my unease, chalking it up to my insecurities rather than recognizing it as a warning sign. As I stood there in our kitchen, the reality of her betrayal hitting me like a freight train, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss, not just for our marriage, but for the dreams we had built together. The life we had envisioned, filled with love and laughter, now felt like a cruel joke. I had given her everything, and in return, she had chosen to share her heart with someone else. The anger that coursed through me was mingled with sadness. I felt betrayed not only by her, but by the very foundation of our relationship. Every laugh, every shared dream, every moment of intimacy now felt tainted. The memories we had created together were overshadowed by the knowledge that she had shared those moments with another man. I needed to confront the reality of what had happened. I couldn't let her walk away unscathed. I had to take control of my life, to ensure that the man who had stolen her heart paid for his actions. The gaming industry was a web of connections, and if I could just find a way to exploit it, I could make sure that Jake's next game launch would be a disaster. As I plotted my course of action, I felt a sense of clarity amidst the chaos. I would channel my pain into something productive, something that would give me a sense of power in a situation where I felt utterly powerless. The thought of revenge fueled me, igniting a fire within my chest. I would make sure that Jake regretted ever stepping into my life. The confrontation had been a whirlwind of emotions, but it was just the beginning of a long, painful unraveling. After I discovered Sarah's betrayal, everything changed. The air felt thick with unspoken words, and I couldn't look at her without feeling a wave of anger and heartbreak wash over me. I needed answers, and I needed to confront her directly about what had happened. That night after the initial shock had settled, I asked her to sit down with me in the living room. It was a space that had once felt warm and inviting, filled with laughter and love. Now it felt cold and hollow, a stark reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our once happy home. I could see the fear in her eyes as she took a seat across from me, her hands fidgeting nervously in her lap. "Sarah," I began, my voice steady but strained. "I need you to tell me everything. How long has this been going on?" She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I didn't want you to find out this way," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen." Didn't mean for it to happen. I shot back, the anger bubbling to the surface again. You think that's an excuse? You've been lying to me for months. You had a choice, Sarah. You chose to be with him instead of being honest with me. Tears welled in her eyes and she took a shaky breath. I know, I messed up. He's someone I connected with in a way I didn't expect. But it was just physical, it didn't mean anything. Just physical. I interrupted, my voice rising. You think that makes it any better? You think that I can just overlook the fact that you've been sleeping with another man? What about us, Sarah? What about our marriage? She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. I know I hurt you. I'm so sorry. It was a moment of weakness and I wish I could take it back. I love you, I do. Please believe me. But her words felt hollow. I wanted to believe her, but the truth was that love didn't justify betrayal. Love. You have a funny way of showing it, I replied bitterly. You've thrown our life together away for a fling, and now you expect me to just forgive you because you say you love me. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to lose you, she cried, her voice breaking. I got caught up in the excitement of my job, the attention. I didn't realize how far I had strayed until it was too late. I shook my head, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on me. So what happens now? Are you just going to go back to him? Is that what you want? No, I want to fix this, I want to make things right, she pleaded, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She was grasping at straws, desperate to salvage something from the wreckage of our relationship. Fix this, I echoed, incredulous. How do you even begin to fix something that's been shattered? Trust isn't something you can just rebuild overnight, Sarah. You've broken it, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt the walls closing in around me, the reality of our situation crashing down like a tidal wave. I had loved this woman, shared my life with her, and now I was faced with the reality that she had chosen to betray that love. I need time, I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. I can't just pretend everything is okay. You need to understand that. Please don't leave me, she said, her voice trembling. I'll do anything. I'll cut off all contact with Jake. I'll prove to you that I can change. The desperation in her voice tugged at my heart, but I couldn't let that sway me. I was filled with a mix of anger and sorrow, torn between the love I had for her and the betrayal that felt like a knife in my back. I don't know if that's enough, I replied, my heart heavy. You've hurt me in a way I didn't think was possible, and I need to figure out what I want. You need to give me space. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay. But I couldn't. I needed to protect myself, to find a way to regain control over my life. As I watched her cry, I realized that I was also grieving, not just for the love we had shared, but for the future I had envisioned with her. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. The anger simmered beneath the surface, and the thought of Jake lingered in my mind like a dark cloud. I had to do something. I wasn't going to sit idly by while he continued to thrive in the industry, basking in the success of my wife's affection. I started to gather information about him, about his projects and the upcoming game launch that everyone in the industry was buzzing about. I had always been good at research, and now I was determined to use that skill to my advantage. If Sarah had chosen him, then it was time for me to make sure he felt the consequences of his actions. I knew the gaming industry had its secrets, and I planned to exploit them. In the days following our confrontation, I found myself consumed by thoughts of revenge. Anger and betrayal brewed within me, and I knew I needed to act. The gaming industry was a complex web of relationships, secrets, and vulnerabilities, and I was determined to navigate that maze to ensure Jake's upcoming game launch would be a failure. It was time to turn my pain into power. I started by researching everything I could about Jake. Sarah had mentioned him before, often in passing conversations about her work. I knew he was a well-respected game developer, known for his innovative approach and his charm that had apparently captivated my wife. But I also suspected he had his share of enemies. Every industry does. I began to dig deeper, searching for any information that could serve as leverage. Late nights became my new routine. I pored over forums, social media, and industry news, looking for anything that could give me an edge. I learned about his latest project, a highly anticipated game that was set to launch in just a few months. The buzz surrounding it was palpable, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of jealousy mixed with determination. This was his moment, and I was going to make sure it crumbled to dust. I also reached out to a few contacts I had in the industry, friends from college who had moved into various roles in gaming, marketing, and journalism. I posed casual questions about Jake, feigning interest in his work while trying to gather information that could help dismantle his reputation. I found out about some of his past projects, the controversies that had surrounded them, and even a few whispers about his questionable business practices. It was a treasure trove of information, and I began to formulate a plan. The more I learned, the more my anger solidified into a tangible plan. I realized that Jake's success depended heavily on public perception and the media's portrayal of his work. If I could get the right information out there, I could tarnish his reputation and create doubt in the minds of his followers. The gaming community was fiercely loyal, but it was also quick to turn on someone who appeared to be untrustworthy. I decided to create an anonymous account on a popular gaming forum where industry insiders often gathered. It wasn't long before I had the opportunity to post about Jake. I crafted a detailed message, outlining the controversies I had discovered and hinting at some of his less-than-savory dealings. I knew that if I could plant the seed of doubt, it could grow into something much larger. Before I hit post, I hesitated, a flicker of doubt creeping in. Was I really willing to go through with this? The thought of ruining someone's career felt heavy, but then I remembered Sarah's betrayal, the pain that had consumed me since that day. I took a deep breath and pressed the button, watching as my message disappeared into the ether of the internet. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Gamers and industry enthusiasts began to comment, sharing their own experiences and opinions about Jake. Some defended him, but others jumped onto the bandwagon, eager to share their own grievances. The tide was turning, and I felt a rush of satisfaction. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to monitor the fallout from my post. The gaming community was abuzz with speculation, and the media began to pick up on the story. Articles started to surface, questioning Jake's integrity and the legitimacy of his work. I felt a sense of power course through me as I watched his carefully crafted image begin to crack. But I was done yet. I knew I needed to escalate my efforts to ensure that Jake's launch would be sabotaged. I began to gather more insider information, focusing on the technical aspects of his game. I had connections who worked in quality assurance and testing, and I reached out to them under the guise of wanting to know more about the game's development. I learned about potential flaws in the gameplay, bugs that hadn't been addressed, and features that were still in development. With this information, I crafted a new plan. I would leak these details to the gaming press, emphasizing the potential issues and calling into question the game's readiness for release. My contacts in the industry were more than willing to help, and soon enough I had a small article drafted, ready to go. As I prepared to send it out, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I was about to unleash a storm, and there was no turning back. I reminded myself of my motivations. This was about more than just revenge. It was about reclaiming my power and ensuring that Jake would feel the repercussions of his actions. Finally, I pressed send, and the article went live. Almost instantly, the reactions poured in. Gamers were buzzing with excitement and concern, sharing the article across social media platforms. The anticipation for Jake's game began to wane as the community questioned whether it would be ready for launch. I sat back, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of Jake's downfall. As I watched the chaos unfold, I felt a rush of adrenaline. But beneath that rush lay a nagging doubt. Was this truly what I wanted? Would ruining Jake's career bring me the closure I needed, or would it only deepen the wounds of my own betrayal? I shook my head, dismissing the thoughts. I had come too far to turn back now. I was committed to seeing this through, no matter the cost. The days following the article's release felt surreal. I was riding a wave of adrenaline and anger, feeding off the chaos I had unleashed. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, messages from friends and acquaintances in the gaming world, all reacting to the fallout surrounding Jake's upcoming launch. It was intoxicating to see my plan unfold, but beneath the exhilaration lay a gnawing sense of unease. As the buzz grew, I continued to dig deeper. I had planted the seeds of doubt, but I wanted to ensure they took root and flourished. I started reaching out to more contacts, gathering intel on Jake's team and the public relations strategies they employed. I learned that they were scrambling to address the backlash, trying to mitigate the damage I had caused. It was satisfying to watch them sweat, but I knew I needed to push harder. I began to craft a series of anonymous tips to various gaming journalists. Each tip contained information about supposed flaws in the game, gameplay mechanics that didn't work as intended, character designs that were rushed, and even whispers of internal conflicts within the development team. I made sure to frame everything I wrote as insider knowledge, building credibility while remaining faceless. The response was swift. Articles began to appear, each one feeding into the narrative I had created. The gaming community was abuzz with skepticism, and the anticipation for Jake's game was rapidly turning into concern. I watched from the sidelines, a puppet master orchestrating a symphony of chaos, and it felt exhilarating. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to grapple with the consequences of my actions. The thrill of revenge was intoxicating, but the reality of what I was doing weighed heavily on me. I reminded myself that Jake had taken something precious from me, my wife, my trust, and my sense of security. I tried to convince myself that I was justified in my actions, but the further I went, the more I questioned whether this would truly bring me the closure I sought. One evening, I received a call from one of my contacts in the industry. He had heard whispers that Jake's team was facing serious problems due to the negative press. The launch was in jeopardy, and they were considering delaying it to address the issues that had been raised. It was a significant blow to Jake's reputation and a massive blow to his career. As I hung up the phone, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. I had achieved what I set out to do. But then a wave of guilt crashed over me. I was ruining a man's career, and for what? To heal my own wounds. I felt like a monster, a dark reflection of the anger that had consumed me since Sarah's betrayal. The next day, I received a message from Sarah. She had been trying to reach out to me since the confrontation, but I had ignored her attempts. This time, she asked if we could meet to talk. I hesitated, torn between the desire to confront her about her infidelity and the realization that I was spiraling into a dark abyss of revenge. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe near our apartment. As I approached the table, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I hadn't seen her since that fateful night, and I was unsure of how I would react. She looked nervous, her eyes darting around the cafe as she waited for me to arrive. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice soft and uncertain. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened." I nodded, crossing my arms over my chest. "What is there to say, Sarah? You cheated on me. You shattered our life together." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "I can't express how sorry I am. I've been trying to understand why I did it. It was a moment of weakness, and I regret it every day." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. "Do you really think I can just forgive you, that we can just go back to how things were?" "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said, her eyes welling with tears. "I just want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right. I love you, and I want to fight for our marriage." Her words struck a chord within me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. "I've already fought for someone else," I replied, my voice cold. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "I've cut off all contact with Jake. I want to show you that I can change. I want to rebuild what we had." As I listened to her, I felt the weight of my own actions pressing down on me. Here I was, plotting revenge against the man who had taken her from me, while she was trying to reclaim our relationship. I realized that I was caught in a cycle of pain and anger, and I was dragging her into it. "Sarah, I've done things, terrible things," I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I've been sabotaging Jake's career. I thought it would make me feel better, but all it's done is make me question who I am." Her eyes widened in shock. "What do you mean? What have you done?" I've been leaking information, spreading rumors. I wanted him to pay for what he did to us. The admission felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders, but the guilt that followed was suffocating. But now I see that it's only making things worse. Why would you do that? She asked, her voice trembling. You're better than this. We can figure this out together. I looked into her eyes, searching for the love we once shared. I don't know if I can go back to what we had. I don't know if I can forgive you, let alone trust you again. As I sat there, grappling with the consequences of my actions and the uncertain future of our relationship, I realized that revenge had consumed me. I had lost sight of what truly mattered, my own integrity and the possibility of healing. The path I had chosen was leading me deeper into darkness, and I had to decide whether I would continue down that road or find a way to reclaim my life. The days following my confrontation with Sarah were a blur of confusion and emotional turmoil. I had laid bare my actions, revealing the extent of my revenge against Jake, and now I was left to grapple with the consequences of both our choices. As I sat in our living room, the weight of my decisions pressed heavily on my chest, and I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had fallen. I had spent weeks plotting Jake's downfall, convinced that destroying his career would somehow heal the wounds Sarah had inflicted on me. But in my quest for revenge, I had lost sight of my own values. I had become someone I barely recognized, bitter, vengeful, and consumed by anger. As I stared at the walls of our home, memories of happier times flooded back, reminding me of the love we once shared. I felt a deep sense of loss, not just for our relationship, but for the person I used to be. Sarah and I had spent countless nights dreaming about our future. We had talked about starting a family, traveling the world, and building a life together. Those dreams now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by betrayal and resentment. I had focused so much on punishing Jake that I had neglected the possibility of healing with Sarah. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to reclaim control, I had only made things worse. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, I found myself scrolling through social media. The gaming community was still buzzing about Jake's game launch and the controversy surrounding it. I felt a pang of satisfaction as I read through the comments, but it was quickly replaced by a gnawing sense of regret. The damage I had done extended beyond just Jake. It was affecting everyone involved, the team he had worked with, the fans who had been excited for the game, and most importantly, Sarah and me. I decided I needed to make a change. I couldn't continue down this path of destruction. I had to confront the reality of my situation and take steps toward healing, both for myself and for Sarah. I reached out to her, asking if we could talk again. This time I wanted to approach the conversation with a clear mind, ready to listen and to discuss our future. When we met, I could see the hope in her eyes, but I also sensed the lingering fear. I've been thinking a lot about everything, I began, my voice steady. About us, about what we've lost, and about the choices I made. I've been thinking about it too, she admitted, her voice soft. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right, but I need you to be honest with me about what you've done. I've been sabotaging Jake's career, I confessed, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I thought it would bring me some sense of control, some sense of justice, but it only made me feel worse. I realized that hurting him wouldn't heal the pain I felt. Sarah looked at me, her expression a mixture of concern and understanding. I appreciate your honesty, but we need to find a way to move forward. I want to rebuild our relationship, but that means addressing the hurt on both sides. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I want that too. I don't know if we can go back to what we had, but I do know that we need to be open and honest about our feelings. I want to stop the cycle of pain. As we talked, I felt a glimmer of hope. We discussed the possibility of couples counseling, a way to work through our issues with the guidance of a professional. It was a step toward healing, a commitment to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. I realized that while the road ahead wouldn't be easy, it was a road worth taking. In the weeks that followed, we began attending therapy sessions together. It wasn't a quick fix, but it was a start. We learned to communicate openly, to express our feelings without fear of judgment. I began to understand the reasons behind Sarah's choices and the pressures she felt in her career. She, in turn, learned about the depth of my pain and the impact of her betrayal. Through the process, I also took steps to rectify the damage I had caused in the gaming community. I reached out to the journalists I had contacted, explaining my actions and asking them to reconsider their narratives. It wasn't easy, and I faced backlash from some corners, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't continue to hide behind my anger. I had to take responsibility for my actions. As time passed, I began to feel a sense of healing. Sarah and I were slowly rebuilding our relationship, brick by brick. It was a fragile process, filled with moments of doubt and uncertainty, but there were also glimmers of joy. The laughter we had once shared, the intimacy we had lost, and the dreams we were beginning to rekindle. One night, as we sat together on the couch, I felt a warmth spread through me. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time, the comfort of being with someone I loved, despite everything we had been through. I realized that while the road to recovery wouldn't be easy, it was one I was willing to take. In the end, I learned that revenge may provide a fleeting sense of satisfaction, but it doesn't fill the void left by betrayal. What truly mattered was the ability to confront our pain, to communicate openly, and to strive for forgiveness. As Sarah and I moved forward, I knew that we had a long way to go, but I was hopeful. Together, we could navigate the complexities of love, trust, and healing.